The floor was cold. I remember that more than the pain. It was the silence after her voice. She's royalty. You're just useful. Then the snap. Then my dad's voice, like static. You should have learned your place. I didn't scream. Not even when the second rib cracked. I didn't cry. Not when I had to crawl past the dining table, where her daughter sat, sipping juice, like I was nothing but background noise. I opened the door with my elbow. The night air punched my lungs. I was dizzy, half-broken, humiliated, and still I whispered, I'm not theirs anymore. My name is Rowan Lee, and if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because what happens when a girl raised in servitude remembers she was born with teeth? What happens when you leave a girl for broken, but forget she still remembers everything? I disappeared for a while. No calls, no texts, not even to the few who loved me. Because when the people you call family treat you like furniture, you start redesigning your home from scratch. But while I healed in silence, they celebrated. My stepmom threw a party for her daughter's college acceptance. Dad gave her my grandmother's necklace, the one meant for me. Photos went up online, captions like, proud of our angel. Our girl is going places. Family wins again. They thought they'd buried me in silence. But some people don't die in the dark. They sharpen. And when I returned, I didn't knock. I didn't ask. I walked in with something that made her daughter stop breathing and made my stepmother whisper, is this a joke? No, it wasn't. It was the beginning of the very long end. They thought I'd come back limping, but I stood tall, not because the ribs had healed, but because the fire in me had. I walked into their living room during one of their picture-perfect brunches, the kind where croissants are hand-stacked, and nothing smells like regret. My stepsister choked on her mimosa. Dad stood up, half pale. Stepmom froze mid-slice of avocado toast. I didn't flinch. Rowan, Dad said, you should have called first. I looked at him like he was a stranger asking for directions. Did you call an ambulance that night? Silence. My stepsister reached for her phone. I beat her to it. On the TV behind them, a still image appeared. A signed document. The deed to the property. My voice was steady. This house doesn't belong to you anymore. Stepmom laughed. Too loud. Too fake. You're bluffing. But I wasn't. Because while they were throwing parties and calling me ungrateful on Facebook, I'd been working. Not just healing. Building. You see, my mom, my real mom, left me something before she passed. A trust. Tied to conditions. Which I'd finally met. And with it I bought every unpaid loan attached to this house. One by one. Bank by bank. It took months. Patience. Pain. But standing there, watching their confidence melt, it was worth every sleepless night. Dad stepped forward. You wouldn't actually kick us out. We're family. I tilted my head. You're right. I wouldn't. Relief flickered. But the new management might. Just then, a black car pulled up. Out came a woman in a blazer. Clipboard in hand. Eviction notice. Effective immediately. My stepsister screamed, You can't do this. I turned toward the door, just like I did the night I left. But this time, without crawling. I'm not doing anything, I said. And for once, they were the ones watching me leave. Except now, they weren't watching a servant. They were watching a storm they created. Come home with a crown. They tried to follow me. Out the door. Down the driveway. Words flying like daggers. Rowan, be reasonable. She's bluffing, Harold. Call someone. We raised you. But I kept walking. Because when someone breaks your ribs, they don't get to ask for your kindness. I got into my car, closed the door slowly, and watched them through the windshield. 3 silhouettes shrinking behind glass. I didn't cry. Not like last time. This time, I breathed. And it didn't hurt. You know what hurts more than broken bones? Being told you're not worth the apology. That night I stayed in a hotel. Nothing fancy. Just quiet. A place where I wasn't someone's servant or burden. Or just useful. I turned off my phone, let their voicemails rot in silence. The next day, the internet woke up. Because I didn't need to scream. I only needed to post one picture. Taken the night, I crawled out of that house. Bruised, blood on my shirt, eyes swollen. Caption: this is what happens when your family believes pain is tradition. Hashtags did the rest. The story exploded. People started asking questions. People they cared about. Colleagues, neighbors, business partners. Turns out, abuse isn't so easy to explain away when it's printed on screens. My stepmom tried to DM me. I know we made mistakes, but this isn't the way. I replied with a screenshot. The ER report. Her signature. Refusing treatment for me. Let the public chew on that. And oh, they did. Suddenly, she wasn't a proud mom. She was the woman who broke her stepdaughter. Dad stayed silent, which was funny. He always had so much to say when it came to reminding me who I belonged to. Now he was just small. And somewhere in their new reality, the rental apartment they'd scrambled to find, a knock came at the door. It wasn't me. I didn't need to knock. But what was left behind? That would speak for me. The knock came at 7:12 a.m. They hadn't even unpacked the last box. Dad opened the door, bleary-eyed. On the welcome mat, a small, square parcel. No note. No return address. Just my stepmom's name, written in the handwriting she couldn't forget. She stared at it, hands trembling. Inside the box was a velvet pouch. And inside that, the necklace. My grandmother's necklace. The one meant for me. The one they'd given to her daughter. Like I was invisible. But this time, it came with something else. A photo of me, standing in front of the local women's shelter, wearing that same necklace, smiling. A caption printed on the back. This is where the story changed, because while they were busy covering their tracks, I was building a trail. Every doctor's note, every photo, every journal entry from my childhood. I handed it over to someone who cared. A woman named Celeste. She ran the shelter. She'd lived my story. But unlike me, she never forgot her power. She gave me a stage, a room, a mic, and an audience that actually listened. You don't know the people who broke you a damn thing, she said. And for the first time in years, I believed it. My story went viral. News outlets called, podcasts, panels, books. But I never said their names. Not once. I didn't need revenge. I needed release. But fate doesn't forget. Dad lost his job within weeks. My stepmom's real estate license was under review. Turns out, abusers make terrible public figures when the truth walks in the door. And I started receiving letters from girls, women, survivors. They weren't asking for help. They were saying thank you. That's when I realized sometimes the best revenge is turning your wounds into their warning. A reporter emailed me, said she wanted to do a story, not about them, about me. How does a girl crawl out of hell and still choose to build instead of burn? I almost deleted it, but then I saw her name, Lauren Dent. She was the one who'd covered my mom's wrongful termination case, back when I was 12. The only journalist who stayed after the headlines faded. So I said yes. We met at a cafe near the courthouse. She didn't bring a camera crew, just a notebook and gentleness. And for 2 hours I told her everything. Not the pain, the path. How I learned to speak legal language out of survival. How I bought their debt with my inheritance. How I found power in silence, but healing in the mic. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask, "Why didn't you leave sooner?" She just listened. When the article dropped, it wasn't a tabloid storm. It was an anthem. She didn't want revenge. She wanted her voice back. They called it one of the most read survivor profiles of the year. And suddenly, women were quoting me on stages, reading my words at marches, tagging my name under stories of resilience. I wasn't a secret anymore. I was a symbol. And you know what symbols do? They haunt the ones who buried them. One night, I got a call. Unknown number. I answered by instinct. It was my dad. "Rowan," he said, voice shaking. "People won't even look me in the eye. What do you want from me?" I let the silence stretch so long, he thought the call dropped. Then I said softly, "I wanted you to be my father." He whispered, "I'm sorry." But I didn't say, "It's okay." Because it wasn't. Because my bones healed. But the little girl who watched her parents call her bruises discipline still existed. So I said something else. "You don't get to speak to me anymore." Click. And the line went dead, just like every excuse he ever made. The next day, I got a package. No return label. No sender's name. Just a battered manila envelope, taped too tightly. Inside, court papers. Filed by them. A cease and desist. They were trying to silence me, again. Claiming defamation, emotional harm, and loss of reputation. I laughed. A dry, bitter kind of laugh that didn't reach my eyes. Because when someone breaks your ribs and reputation in the same house, you don't panic at paperwork. You sharpen your pen. I called my attorney, the same one who once represented battered women pro bono. He didn't even blink. "They just poked the bear," he said. "Let's remind them whose cage they used to rattle." The case never made it past the first hearing. The judge read the file, looked at the photos, the ER statements, the voicemail transcripts. Then she looked at them, sitting in their polished shoes and rehearsed sorrow. She asked one question. "Do you understand the difference between being exposed and being held accountable?" They stammered. And she dismissed the case. With prejudice. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. They asked if I had a statement. I held up a single photo. That same one. Me in front of the shelter, smiling. And I said, "This is my response. No names. No insults. Just proof. Proof that I didn't need to scream. To be heard." Back at the shelter, I taught a writing workshop for girls like me. I watched them reclaim their own broken timelines, one paragraph at a time. My ribs had healed, but now I was building something bigger. A voice too loud to erase. And somewhere across town, they were watching it unfold. Knowing the daughter they once called just useful was now the author of their ending. I stood on the TEDx stage. Not in a power suit. Not in heels. Just jeans, a linen blouse, and a pair of shoes that didn't hurt when I walked. There were 500 people in the audience, but I stared straight into the lens. Because I wasn't talking to them. I was talking to the girl I used to be. The one who flinched when doors slammed. The one who learned to smile while bleeding. The one who thought silence was survival. "My name is Rowan," I said. "And if no one's ever told you this, being treated like nothing doesn't mean you are." People cried. People stood. But I didn't pause for applause. Because I knew somewhere, someone who hurt me was watching. And I wanted them to see what it looks like when the girl you broke grows into the storm. After the talk, I got an email from a lawyer. Not mine. The lawyer representing their bankruptcy filing. Turns out, when your reputation crumbles, so do your businesses. Your real estate, your social invites. Everything they built by stepping on my back collapsed. They listed my TED Talk in the court file, said it directly affected their income. I smiled, not because I wanted them ruined, but because I finally understood something. I didn't destroy them. They did. With every lie, every blow, every twisted bedtime story that made me think I was the villain. I was never the villain. I was the record keeper, the silent witness, the girl with broken ribs and a spine of iron. Now I was the reason they flinched when someone said my name in public, and I hadn't even raised my voice. The day the final notice came, I didn't open it. I just watched from the window as movers dragged out the last piece of their empire. The house? Gone. The stepdaughter's royalty. A memory. My father's pride? Folded under foreclosure papers. I didn't cheer, didn't post. Instead, I packed a single box. Inside it, a photo of me, age 12, holding a library book with bruises peeking out from my sleeves. A copy of the restraining order. and a letter. This is what happens when you mistake obedience for weakness. This is what happens when a girl learns that her silence was never protection, only postponement. I mailed it to their new address, a P.O. box, because there's no forwarding address for shame. Later that week, I went back to the shelter, where I now served on the board. A new girl had arrived. Quiet. Eyes dark like old storms. Hands that flinched without reason. She asked me, "Does it ever stop hurting?" I didn't lie. I said, "No, but it becomes fuel." We painted a wall together, her brush shaky, mine steady. By the end, our names were signed next to a quote I once whispered into a dark corner of my room. Pain isn't the ending. It's the proof you're still here. And somewhere, in a tiny apartment paid for with borrowed guilt, my stepmother opened that box and met the ghost she'd created. But I was too busy building a future to care if they finally understood the past.